Sangyen Shentan Sangyen Shanamda Chanchun Parandun Dani Kyapsuchi Bhage Jenso Gipe Sananke Dala Benchre Sangyen Dobasho.
The excellent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until the attainment of enlightenment through the merit of my generosity and so forth. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of benefiting beings.
So today traditionally when we say analytical meditation, there are certain stages or the object of analyzing, and it depends on which tradition you follow, but generally it's not that big different. For instance, generally, especially in the sutra tradition, when you practice meditation, analytical meditation or observing meditation, you go through 4 mindfulness stages: body, feeling, mind, and object of mind. In Mahayana, kind of similar, but we say that looking at the appearances and first stage, and establishing appearances as a mind, and looking at the nature of mind, and looking at the one who is looking. You can kind of say the mind of mind. And finally, going beyond the resting in the stage where there's nothing to be looked at and nothing that is looking. So this is Mahayana's, or you can say Mahayana approach of the stages of meditation. But generally we can say that most of the time when we practice analytical meditation, there are certain themes that we can focus on, such as impermanent is one subject, and suffering is another subject, emptiness, and finally the observing the self or selflessness. So these are the very fundamental subjects that we investigate. Now this might sound like a little bit random, and you just choose, but it's quite important, because from the Buddhist point of view, if you ask, okay, so what is the main problem? What is the source of everything? Then we always say, I, right? This I, ego. So why we choose these subjects, impermanent, suffering, emptiness, everything? Actually, these opposite of not knowing these things is the formula to create the illusion of I. So there's a big reason why we choose this. And Buddha says again and again in his teaching, Four Noble Truths, Four Seals, understand this, understand this. It's not for fun, or it's not for something new, it's just there's an illusion of I. We can say that it's an I, look at I, but then it doesn't really work that way, our mind. So it's like if you are teaching a small child, what is apple? You just say, oh, let's say it, apple, apple, right? You can repeat it 100 times. So you have to tell, apple is made out of 4 words. Okay, this is called A. This is called P. You don't pronounce apple or apple. You just say apple. Put it together. It's kind of like that. So all this practice, whether you practice Mahayanas, emptiness, selfness, even you practice Guru Rinpoche, directly or indirectly, it has something to do with this I. So it's coming from different direction, different kind of weapon, but our target is always one. So I think in Buddhism, sometimes it depends on who you are. We feel a little bit bored, but because from the Buddha to the Nagarjuna to your guru, everyone is saying same thing again and again and again. Even though you read one verse or you read 100,000 verse, actually it's almost saying one thing. Usually our mind doesn't like that. We need variety, choices, and we get bored because I already know it, but actually, do you? We don't know, but we think we know it, then we get bored. and we move on to something else. This is how our mind works. So as a Buddhist, let's say myself, even though I don't understand, but somehow I feel very proud that from the Buddha to my root guru, all of them saying same thing. If they keep saying different, I will be quite devastated, like who should I follow? Because my root guru is saying one thing, Buddha is saying another thing, It's too much. It's like going to IKEA. Sometimes better to go to a small shop, right? So this boredness can occur if you don't know the points. Saying again and again. But this is the strength, I think, of Buddhist, that everybody fundamentally agreed. And whether you look at from the scholar point of view, practitioner's point of view, mundane point of view, even conventional truth point of view, it somehow comes down to the same thing. And then it seems like a Buddha actually got it, the point, rather than figuring out so many possibilities and saying this might be possible, that might be possible, like how scientists say, every too many possibilities. So what I'm trying to say is that all the Dhamma we practice, and especially the meditations, directly or indirectly has something to do with this I. If it's nothing to do with I, then actually you are not meditating, or your meditation is not becoming a path. It's becoming maybe, I don't know, time passing or temporary vacation, kind of thing. So what I'm trying to say is that the one important aspect of analytical meditation, actually among the mindfulness, it comes on the thought. And of course, if you practice 4 Noble Truths, is there. And also in the Mahayana, after you come to the certain kind of conclusions that yes, everything is on mind, and then you try to look at this mind. And why I'm saying mind is that because somehow when you analyze, it looks like the thought, the mind, is a I, is a me. So it's very likely we will come to that conclusion. My body is not me, but what is my identity, how I identify, consciously, subconsciously, you feel that, oh, mine is I. So investigating mind and investigating I becomes quite close. In all the Buddhist sutras and teachings, we often say that I and all our story starts from there. My country, my friend, and then attachment, anger arises and the story starts. So the point is that observing this I think it has many layers. You can do it in the tradition it is said that there's two layers. We call it the intrinsic I and imputed I. These are not two I's, but these are two layers of the same I. Because in Tibetan we use the word I and my, something like that. But I think because in Tibetan we don't have in English, I think you can kind of say, not exactly, but like when you say I'm going to do this, I'm having this, I'm suffering, I'm happy, yeah? The first word, I, fundamental that you exist, believe. That is intrinsic I. Basically, you exist, there's no doubt. But still you are not very clear about your character. Right? It's like maybe you're just born maybe 1 week ago or 1 day ago. You exist, but you don't identify yourself with lots of characteristics. And maybe the next word, when you say I am, right? And when you characterize yourself with a certain kind of attributes, this word am, becomes the imputed I. It's not just I exist. I am a monk. Right? I am a boy. So this am, when you put the I and paint it with the am, so it really depends on your background, where you come from. Maybe you're more associated with the wealth, maybe this aim is more associated with education, whatever is your environment and how you are made out of actually. This aim is very much like a product of your environment. Whether you're born in rich family, poor family, compassion family, so that's how you identify yourself. And this is what we call the imputed I, because it's all identity that is product or the influence of my environment and how I grow up and what kind of mindset I have and what kind of assumptions and presumptions that I have. When you put all these together, this aim becomes who you are. And of course, for example, I will associate myself more with the monk, right? So I will be identify myself with I'm a monk. So I will get very happy if you praise me something related to the monk, and if you say something bad about being a monk, I will be really get. So this becomes my burden. And then also, I believe myself I'm a Tibetan. Okay. So if you say any words about Tibetan, I will get angry. Even you say something's another Tibetan, which has nothing to do with me, And if you say anything about the Buddhist, I will get. So see how I associate, I almost pretend like I don't care, but I care a lot actually. So this neurotic I, that actually I made it myself, isn't it? It's not that I was born as a Tibetan Buddhist monk from my mother's womb. It's not like that. I was just born basically I, right? Colorless I. So that's why we call it imputed. Now the very important thing is that the biggest problem, why you scared from the rope? Because illusion, scariness happens. So this is completely imputed based on different factors, but I 100% denied that I am a imputed Tibetan Buddhist monk. Not at all. Even though I don't have any, maybe I have like passport or identity card to show you, but this is my very clear view about my identity. See, completely collectively imputed I becomes the complete real me, like how rope becomes the snake. I will never accept that this is imputed. Otherwise, why would I get angry when you say something to Tibetans or Buddhists? If I say, "Oh, you stupid Tibetan," you will just laugh, because why? It's not your identity. You don't care. But if I say stupid English, immediately, there will be a different reaction. But actually, what I say was almost the same, but the first, you don't impute. The second one, that's how you went. So my point is that this very elusive I, we believe that I almost born as this me, was the very fundamental illusion, and it becomes a very strong burden to all our other emotions. And when you turn off that, all the other burdens turn off. But of course, since we have built this I with so much effort, it took me 40 years to become a Tibetan monk that I've identified myself. And when you build something with fighting with people, cheating with the people, do your best, you cannot just give it up easily. Now, this intrinsic I definitely is a very fundamental problem, but if you look at, it's a very, you can say, subtle problem. I exist, okay, that's not that big problem. But the problem is that imputed I. intrinsic, even animals, everyone has, and they have their small problem because they have a small, compared to us, imputed I. That's why human beings are very, very difficult compared to animals when we talk about the mental suffering. Because the less imputation, the less problem. Less competitiveness, the more identity, the more imputation I, the more competition, more anger, more jealousy, more suffering. Now the point is that when you look at this I, you have to little bit go back, and you have to little bit study your history of your habitual patterns. Because it's not a one thing again, This I is a strong result of millions and millions bits of our habits, doing it again and again. You were born, and then our parents told us, this is father, this is mother, and they almost insist us to say papa, mama, and then eventually, so all these, you grow up, study, then society tell us, oh, you have to have an identity, otherwise, so all these human social pressures. But unfortunately, the human, it seems that human society is not very clear about what is healthy and what is unhealthy. We're just trying everything, and if you look at the history, we have done quite a bad job till now. So it's not really insight and wisdom enough to guide someone towards the happiness. That's as Shantideva says, that we all want happiness, but we actually destroy our own happiness. We all doesn't want to suffering, but we almost run towards the death, every day more and more, individually and collectively, not knowing because of ignorance. So, okay. If you look at our sufferings, so now the question is that when we practice Dhamma, especially analytical meditation, you have to, maybe it will be difficult to accept subconsciously that this is imputed, but at least you have to kind of consciously accept that this is imputed. That there's some place to work on. Because what we call practicing Dharma, Buddha would be called awaken, right? Because somebody is trying to wake up. Like we are having this imputed dream and suffering. Somebody is trying to wake up. As if that we just went to sleep and we became like a false identity, and actually we are suffering that with that false identity. The most dangerous thing is that unless you don't accept, yes, I am asleep, it's almost impossible to wake you up. So this is the first thing. It takes time, but you have to start. Maybe in English you have saying, right? What you say that you cannot wake up, and you can wake up who is actually sleeping, but you cannot wake up someone who is pretending to sleep, right? Isn't it? So this is actually that point. If you don't accept your sleep, then nobody can wake you up. And actually, ego is very, very, this imputed self is an expert of that, pretending to be asleep. Try to avoid any kind of disturbances that comes near to and wake up. We do. We have many good reasons, right? Excuses. This is also one big reason why Buddha emphasized suffering. To recognize, to realize that we are actually sleeping, so that actually Buddha can wake us up. Until he cannot do anything. Because if someone is pretending to sleep, not accepting, then you move with him, no matter what you do it, he will never be awakened. So now, when you look at what is this I, one time Melaraba was going, and he met a shepherd who would want to practice, and he asked Melaraba, what is I? What is mind? Is there one mind or many mind? Was one I or many I? And Melaraba told him, "Oh, you go back and see, how many eyes or minds you have." And the next day, the shepherd come back and say, "Well, it's very confusing, but somehow I didn't like it." This I, because he does exactly opposite of what I told him to do. I kind of didn't like it. And Maharaj said, "Why?" Because if I said sit there, he'll start walking. If I said come with me, whether he go before or after me. And when I say I don't want to look at you, he starts staring me. And when I look at him, and he just disappears. So he does all the opposite things that I want him to do. So this shepherd was referring his mind as an I. He was being very honest. And he honestly said, Milarepa, that it's very complicated, this thing. But somehow it seems that it's very troublesome. And I didn't like it. So that was the first experience of Shepherd practicing the egolessness practice, and he actually saw the downfalls of imputed I, and it's a power, it's a dynamic. Now the point is that this I, the very fundamental is that this I is very important, very precious. I mean, from our perspective, okay? Why I get angry? I'm important. I deserve this, I deserve that, I didn't get it. Why we get depressed? I want to be the best. I could not. See this, the word we call the cherishing, self-cherishing. So the question is, are you really that important? Somehow we believe we are. And I think especially in the West, because of the culture, we have been told that you are precious, you are the most beautiful, you are the most important. We really have to genuinely ask ourselves, are we really? I'm not saying that you are terrible, but I'm saying in the sense that this we cherish, because it's important. Or it is important, that's why we cherish. That's a different thing. We believe that it is important, that's why I'm cherishing it, but actually many times we are cherishing it, and because of that, elusively it becomes important. It's not the other way. This is a very critical point, actually. Why we think we are important? And it is a really elusive, or it is a real important, because the moment, in the Chandrakirti says that when you have an I and this I am important, you forget everything else. You lose compassion, you lose concern, you lose empathy, because it doesn't really matter who's suffering when I am. See? And that's the way compassion, everything because there's a me, there's an other. And others are always in the secondary, me first. Even someone is suffering a lot comparatively, but I will still stick on my 20% suffering rather than someone else 80% suffering. I will look at this as most important. So you cut down everything. It is such a elusive and such a negative that sometimes it becomes, even you start hating yourself. I mean, that is outrageous. Like, okay, you hate somebody else, that's fine, but you even start hating yourself. What could be the most self-destructive, stupid thing you can do is to hate yourself. For what? Definitely not because of compassion, right? Definitely not because of altruistic mind. I mean, sometimes that happens. That's a different kind of. So it is such a ignorant. In a way, you can say that you hate other people, that's understandable. But you hate yourself because of, for what? So this elusive, imputed I, it is very tricky, and it is strong because of, we build this. It didn't happen in one day. So it took a lot of time to do that. And especially these days, everyone is encouraged us to do that. This is success, this is identity, this is status. The more you have, the better it is. So now, if you look at, for example, why we mistaken rope as a snake, because there are certain characters, certain shapes, certain colors on this rope. Because of that, we mistaken. Similarly, I think you can find out lots of clues and signs why this illusion, why we become almost like what you call the ego-cherishing and egoless phobia, right? We get so scared the moment something happens, and it has all is this self-ego defense mechanism. Even actually the why I cut my hair in a certain way, why I color my it's all my ego defense mechanism, so that I can present myself as a Tibetan monk. These days we have even a card telling that who you are, whatever about this status. So all these are ego defense tools and the mechanisms that we have created, and many of them are social, many of them are self-created, many of them are self kind of assume it's going to help me to protect that. So we will do our best to protect that identity, because somehow we have this very intrinsic ego has some sort of features of not to lose that, to keep that. And I think the intrinsic ego all beings have, but this imputed ego, human beings are the worst, I think. Or Germans or Tibetans or Buddhists or non-Buddhists, or I don't know, a whole range of these wraps, the layers of wrappers, we have, so that your ego looks beautiful. I think the one main point of practicing Dharma is that you can say peeling out all those layers one by one, actually. From the Buddhist point of view, Mahayana's point of view, actually the Buddha is inside, and it is wrapped by thousands of the wrapping papers of the ego, and then you cannot see it, it cannot shine out because it has so many layers of what you call wrapping papers, yeah. So when we say practicing, accumulating merit, actually what we are doing is peeling out one by one. And the more you peel out, you become close to your Buddha nature, the real you. So you peel out the imputed ego, you peel out the intrinsic ego, and whatever is left as actually a Buddha nature. In a way, you can say that. Now, so what is the mechanism? What are the components that make this whole illusion that importantness me? Yeah, importantness me. You can see there are certain false beliefs about time and space. Okay, so let's say why the illusion of snakes happens. So there's certain kind of causes and conditions coming together, because it was dark and because there was the shape and the color of rope was kind of like a snake, or maybe the snake that you saw you're familiar with, something. So when all this comes together, illusion happens. Similarly, ego has also certain kind of confusions, not only confusions, but they actually ego some sort of builds up this illusion habits to evaluate and actually, how do you say, prove it is true, it exists, and it is valid. Okay, so these are actually ego's kind of rational reasons to prove that you are important and it is valid to do that. There are 4 things, and of course we've heard this many times, but most of the time, first one is more related to the, I would say, time. So illusion of time is that somehow I'm important because I have a life. We say I have a life, right? I have a life. So when we say when I have a life, it means that I was born long time ago. Yeah, I'm young now, and I'm going to be old. And you don't say, oh, the one part of I was born and now I'm young, and then maybe in future one part of me will be dying. Not like that. So you put all them together. I was born, and right now, and if I don't do this, this will happen to me, that will happen to me. So there's when you put all these things together, past me, future me, right now me, all together, and believing that this is me, and these are all happening because I have to take care of my future because I am that. I'm still suffering because when I was young this happened to me. Okay, so basically you put all the past, present, future thoughts, emotions, memories together and believe that actually this is the same person, same thing, and this is what I call. That's why it is valid to worry about my future. It is valid to worry about this and about that, because it is valid to get sad what happens when I was 5 years old, because it's a me. See, this is a big illusion, and ego try to do that to prove that it is valid to get sad, regret, everything. Of course, there's certain thing is not that bad, but we always go too much past, too much present. We're not saying that forget about everything. but we always go too much. That's the problem. So in the technical term, we say that taking this I as impermanent. Okay, of course, if I ask you rationally, you will say, no, I'm not impermanent, I get old. But actually, when I ask you, are you sad? Yeah, I'm sad because this happened to me, or that's gonna happen to me. See, so emotionally, you still believe. You react that way. But rationally, if you ask someone, say, no, I'm impermanent, but you don't react as impermanent. You still hold on, and overly excited or overly disappointed or too much hope and too much fear. And that's why maybe we already heard a lot about present moment is important, right? In meditation, the one big reason is that, so that you are not hijacked by ego. At least at that moment, the stream of ego, the validity of ego is not working. It's kind of stopped there. At least slow down. It makes a big difference. Now, the second thing is that we don't identify ourselves as a dependent phenomena. We call it okay, so actually when we say I, what is I, right? It seems like there's one me. Somehow you don't see it, you don't meet it, but he doesn't listen to you. Anyway, it's there. But then if you look at, it's always like, it seems that this I is almost like not like a tree, yeah. Even though it feels like it's like a one tree, it is more like a jungle, right? At least we have body, mind, and also in our body, eye consciousness is a little bit different. When you hear sound, it's a little bit different, and how you react to the sound and what you visual. So that's a lot of things happening, and then it's not just this I, what we believe. The reason is that because when you have this singularity, you become too arrogant. Again, this ego becomes more vivid when you have a singular I. And when you look at it as collectively, ego kinds of goes down, because it's like saying that if I do something by myself, whether I will be very happy or very disappointed, because I have those responsibility, yeah, because it's me, my project. Let's say you're working with 100 people, you don't really become too sensitive, because it doesn't really matter. If fails, 100 people will fail altogether. If something succeeds, it's like everybody takes credit. So you don't become too, what do you call, neurotic about that, yeah, sensitive. This is also, and there's always flexibilities. And when you think I'm singular, it becomes a very strong sensitive. Now the very important thing is that the third one, I do think by my own wish. If I wanted to eat, I will eat. If I don't like it, change it. So somehow we believe that actually ego has some sort of power, like this independent power. This is the big mistake we make, and that's why you become so angry when things doesn't happen the way you want. And I think we almost, and because I think the modern development sometimes almost assure you that you can take control. That's why if snows, no problem, I will have a heater, If it is cold outside, it doesn't matter, I have a jacket, right? If you get sick, I have a hospital, So we have created that kind of environment, and we kind of really become believing that actually, yes, you are the owner of this world and you can control everything, And I think especially in the developed country, since if you don't like, just push the button, right? In our undeveloped country, we still kind of have a kind of fear towards the weather, and the trees and the waters and the fields. We feel that they are very important. And if 1 year there's drought, I might die, something. So life becomes more that related to my tree, water, everything, rather than I'll push the button and change the weather. It's not really like that. So this is very, let's say I wanted to drink, right? Okay, let's say I wanted to drink, and we feel almost like, I did it by my own independently, but did you? No, because I'm thirsty. That's what I'm doing. Will you drink when you are not thirsty? It will be torture, yeah? Why? Because you're not thirsty. So everything is happening actually out of control, causes and conditions. But somehow ego still believes that I'm doing it out of my own wishes, and I can do it, and I will change everything that I don't like it, or I have to get everything that I like it. So this is the big mistakes ego makes, because everything is actually happening through the power of something else. Why you eat? Because you're hungry. Yeah. Why you go to sleep? Because you're tired. Right? Even why you talk? Because it's not really because your thought comes up and talk, It's your thought actually doing it. So actually everything is happening out of ego's control, but somehow ego still believes that I'm doing that. He's taking all this credit. And more you make this illusion of controlling everything, and more you become the problem. So when you have these all components, okay, I'm kind of same past, present and future. That's why I'm important. I work so hard, otherwise I will die alone. All these thoughts put together, you become this I has to protect, has to be sustained, you cannot lose it. And then when you become a little bit like independent, like me, instead of looking at mind, body, 5 aggregates, 6 sense working together, instead of just saying, I do this, I do that. And the most important thing is that you believe that actually things are doing by